Okay, we're back. Monthly Movie Dispatch. We're doing our Star Wars retrospective, coming back after a little break, and we are officially into a new world. And when I say a new world, George Lucas has sold Star Wars to Disney for
to the man.
$4.2 billion. It is funny that you say that, the man, though, because it's like it really was. You know, we just were talking about his original trilogy and how after Empire he was like, well, screw you, Directors Guild, I don't want to be part of your studio system. I'm a man, I'm doing it myself, you know. And I'm gonna fund it myself. And
yeah,
but I mean, after what happened with the prequels and him being like public enemy number one with Star Wars fans, he was probably like, shit, yeah, $4 billion or however much he sold it for. I mean, sounds pretty nice.
I think that is the next step of like toxic Star Wars fans. Is like after the prequels, there's the whole like the people versus George Lucas thing. Like this guy who was just like, oh man, I have a fun space idea. Just ended up like being dumped on by these people for doing it wrong. It's like, that sucks. Like, he's like,
you didn't do it like what's in my head.
Yeah,
right.
Like I'm in some ways I'm surprised that we're surprised that like Star Wars fans are still being awful to people nowadays because like they turned on George Lucas and told him that he was doing Star Wars wrong.
Right.
You know?
Well, the thing is, like, it just comes down to, like, how people feel about the quality of the movie, and then the legacy. The legacy's fine because legacy changes, because we can already see that's kind of coming back around. Like, once people decided that the prequels were bad, they were so bad.
Yeah. And
everyone hated every part of them. And, I mean, we just talked about them. I don't think any of us think they're, like, the best movies ever. Like, But already our opinions have changed. Like,
I still think they're bad. But
no, totally. But like,
I sat and watched them, and I was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah,
there was some fun in there.
Yeah, I think long term, I think more about the stuff that I like about them than the stuff I don't like.
Right, but I also like. I feel like for the longest time, The Phantom Menace was.
Yeah,
the worst one.
The worst movie
hence I did
ever made.
Yeah, hence I did the machete cut, where it's like just cut out the worst one, cut out the Phantom Menace, then you don't have to watch the worst one. It's the terrible one. But now, shit, I'll watch the Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
almost any time. Like if someone were to say to me, "Hey, you want to come over and watch Phantom Menace?" I'd be like, "Huh, interesting. I'm into it. Like let's party." You know? Clone Wars, oh man, fuck George Lucas, you know. But yeah, it is interesting. And what's interesting too is that like we're like whether we like it or not, like we're part of this.
Yeah, we're definitely in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean we're Star Wars fans.
Yeah, and
we're talking about other Star Wars fans who are toxic, but also we were super into the Plinkett reviews, and we still think they're good. But like those were just pure negative, hateful reviews, and I don't want to say the word. I mean, it's okay to be critical, but I mean those kind of
they got into like talking about how George Lucas would just sit around set drinking his coffee, and like it was more than just critiques.
It got
of the
personal,
movie.
Which is like the thing that bums me out about these things, where it's like, oh man, I didn't like that movie.
Right.
I'm gonna go after somebody.
Right. And like, yeah, it's weird how that happens. And I mean, like everyone makes. I feel like every director has made a bad movie.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not Stanley Kubrick, but like, Steven Spielberg went back to the well for Indiana Jones 4, and just like the prequels, no one liked those movies. But like. That fan base wasn't as strong as the Star Wars fan base, and he wasn't ridiculed beyond belief until he was shrunk down and now everyone wanted to make a movie again. He moved on. He just, we didn't like that one. That was a bad Indiana Jones movie. And now he's thinking about making another one, you know? And
well, okay, like I think we should get into talking about the movies, because I think a lot of this will come up in the conversation about The Last Jedi. Because part of The Last Jedi's whole thing is addressing something in the Star Wars, like, fan base that, like, okay, we all know the rules of how a Star Wars should work, and if you break those rules, you're a bad person. And, like, that's, yeah. I think there's a lot of that where, like, people were like, okay, I get Star Wars. I grew up with it. Like, I know how it works, and if you do it wrong, then, like, you're screwing something up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back into it. Episode 7, The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens came out in 2015, December. Main plot points. Poe Dameron is captured by Kylo Ren while retrieving a map to Luke Skywalker, because Luke Skywalker has gone into exile. But Poe Dameron hides the map in his droid BB-8. BB-8 meets Rey and Finn, who are being chased by the First Order stormtroopers. They escape in the Millennium Falcon, which is just at a junkyard. After they escape in the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo and Chewbacca, they track the Falcon and meet Rey and Finn. They start putting pieces together. They're kind of trying to get back to General Leia at this point. But in the meantime, the First Order's new weapon, the Star Killer base, destroys multiple planets, effectively crumbling the New Republic that has been set up. Kylo Ren then captures Rey and encourages her to join him on the dark side. Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Finn infiltrate the Starkiller base. They successfully help Rey escape and shut off the shields so it can be attacked by the Resistance. Han Solo confronts his son, Kylo Ren, and Ren kills him. Kylo Ren then duels with Finn and Rey. Finn is badly hurt, but Rey overcomes Kylo, and they escape before the Starkiller base is destroyed. R2-D2 then shares the rest of the map to Luke Skywalker with Rey, and she travels to find him, and then the movie ends. So it's almost surreal, like seeing all that on like just saying those plot points out loud, because yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty much like A New Hope. Like it's almost like, wow, that's basically what happened. Like giving the plans to the droid, Starkiller blows up a planet. They have to go and save their friend who's trapped on the base, and then disable
kind of a lower level kind of worker scavenger person. I mean, similarities with Luke there.
Right.
Yeah,
there's
a desert orphan.
Planet. Yeah,
right. There's
desert orphan.
There's a lot of similarities with A New Hope, but I just want to say that I always felt like what The Force Awakens needed to do was set up new interesting characters for this new trilogy, and craft a new modern style, like a new look for these movies, because I mean the prequels have a look. It's like that CG early 2000s thing, and then the old ones have, like the original trilogy, have their look. They needed to make something style. They had to have a style there, and I think that they made expectations. Like they successfully hit those two things. And I mean, if you think back to it, back in 2015, when again after Revenge of the Sith, we didn't know if there was going to ever be a Star Wars movie again.
Yeah.
And at this point, the hatred for the prequels has like festered.
Yeah.
I think that J.J. Abrams and his team made a story that was safe, non-experimental, and familiar, so that they could get the style and the characters off the ground, and kind of get the bad taste from the prequels out of people's mouths, so they could make 25 more Star Wars movies.
And to that, like I think like the first thing I said or I thought when I walked out of the theater was, I just watched a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Like thank God we got another goddamn Star Wars movie. Like,
right.
prequels were their own thing. They didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. This one felt like a Star Wars movie. A great adventure story of, characters kind of rising to the occasion and just a ton of fun. So
yeah, and it's definitely like it's like a variation on the theme, and in a funny way, in the same way that we talked about A New Hope kind of being this like a remix of like the hero's journey and samurai movies and westerns and old serials. This is kind of it's like a remix of that, like
remix it is of the remix.
It is. It is kind of doing the same thing, but for different reasons. But it is like bringing in new stuff and new ideas and taking the like characters and elements that we know and love and trying to like tell us what's going on 30 years later or whatever.
Right.
Or 30 years, in universe 30 years after Return of the Jedi or whatever.
And I mean, again, I'm sorry, but like I loved all of the characters pretty much in this movie. Like I thought, I just thought Kylo Ren was the villain that we needed at the time. He's just obsessed with the past. Like he wants to be Darth Vader so bad, but he's really just like a child who has toxic masculinity and just can't really control his emotions. That scene where he just gets some bad news and then just rips out his lightsaber and destroys a computer. It's like, you're just kind of a brat, And then Rey's got this like wide-eyed innocence about her where she's natural at everything, but she's also like really eager and excited about the world that she's going on to explore. And Finn's like someone who we haven't seen in any of these movies, where his instinct is fear and to fight or flight in that fear. His instinct is to fight. Like he's always trying to run, and I think there's good reason to. Like Kylo Ren's scary, and
but it wasn't just Kylo Ren. It was being faced with that moment of doing something wrong. And I was, as you were saying that, the first thing that popped in my head is like there's a moral code, but I don't even know if he has a moral code. It was just like it was in that moment he just couldn't bring himself to do it, and and so it's kind of like the not fight or flight, but it's kind of an emotional like gut feeling or reaction that he just couldn't go through with it, and so he ran away.
But then even later in the movie though too, he's tasked with like they're gonna go find the resistance, and he's like but I could go jump on that ship and go to the outer realms and be safe. And then even going to save Rey, like Rey was his only friend he ever made, and he's like I'll go save Rey because she's my only friend, but like I just want to save her so I can get us both to safety. Like we need to run. This is messed up.
He knows the First Order, and he knows how scary they are. And,
I think this one sets up a pretty interesting dynamic between the two of them. That the sequels, the rest of this trilogy, don't really pay off for me. But one thing. J.J. Abrams is a pretty like flashy, blockbustery filmmaker. Like he doesn't get a lot of credit for sort of being an artist, which like in large part I can agree with. But one thing that I've always appreciated about this movie that I think is a really interesting choice that is pulled off really well is the introduction to both Finn and Rey, our like new main characters. Both of them have masks on and don't talk for the first 5 minutes we're with them, and we end up on their side and like relating to them and being empathetic with them before we have like seen them or heard them say anything.
Even Kylo Ren to an extent. I mean, we hear what he says, but we don't see his face for quite a while.
And which I know, like, I'm sure that ties into the whole like J.J. Abrams mystery box, never wanting to tell anyone any real information. But I think it works really well, and it's like a testament that you're not that right out the gate he's not like, all right, this is like Daisy Ridley. She's like very beautiful, and like here she is doing something awesome. The movie, like her chunk starts with like, here's a weird person in a mask crawling around a crashed Star Destroyer, just all alone. You just see her doing her thing, and like you get a whole sense of who she is and what her day-to-day is like.
I don't think he's withholding anything there. I think he is telling you everything you need to know about the character.
Totally. And it's, I think it works
really
really
piece
well
of filmmaking,
where you like you get so on their side because you feel like at least I feel like you it puts you in their thought process instead of you're not just like watching them say dialogue.
Yeah.
You're like figuring stuff out with them and So I think this is a brilliant choice and goes a long way to just like, all right, so whatever's up with these two people, like I get them and I'm on board with them.
And I just want to go back to the style real quick. Like I thought that this movie had that modern look that I was looking for completely. Like that first scene where she was flying around with the Millennium Falcon. Like I've never seen the Falcon move that way, but like it was realistic. Like I was like, I can imagine it moving that way. Like she flew it through those old Death Stars or Star Destroyers, but it moved in that like really like specific way where a ship that size would move.
Yeah, it had like a weight to it.
Yeah, and it curved, and it there was like a physics that they thought about. You could just tell, and they couldn't with the original trilogy because they didn't have the technology. They were working with big blocky sets, and then
like even the prequels when they could pretty much do whatever they wanted, they everything felt weightless. The ships were just kind of.
I felt like with the prequels they were too focused on doing everything. It was like, oh, we can do CG, so we can do everything. We'll do everything.
Yeah.
We'll have 1,000,000 ships. But it's like it's not about more. It's about how it makes you feel, and like that moment in that first sequence with the Falcon where she flips the ship in that certain way so that Finn can shoot after his gunner got broke.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, wow. Like, we all know the Falcon so well, but never seen a move like that. And it just, to me, that set the table for the style for all the, like, every Disney Star Wars movie. But, like, even...
And, like, just the idea of, like, they're taking something we know and like already, but they're, like, they are doing something new with it. You know, like it is a little fan servicey to be, like, oh no, we need a random spaceship. It happens to be the Millennium Falcon. But then they.
But then they go and do
it's
something
not
like
just
that.
Fan service. They're also like, okay, but now also the Millennium Falcon is older and worse, and like so, like we really have to like be inventive with how we use this idea rather than just blurt it out because we all recognize it. I don't know. Yeah.
So. So when The Force Awakens came out, I mean, it was a success, made a lot of money, and but I think there was a lot of criticism, widespread about how similar it was to A New Hope. Do you guys think that was fair? Do you think that's fair criticism of this movie?
I've been thinking more and more lately. Ideas are overrated. I really do think like. On a superficial level, there are a lot of similarities. The desert planet, put the thing in the droid, it tries to escape, and there's Star Killer base, pretty much Death Star. But really telling a good story, that's not even half the battle. The bulk of telling a good story is good writing, good characters, good characterization, and fun like for these movies, fun action, and it's the nitty-gritty, down and dirty filmmaking that is what really matters. And I think this movie hits on most of those things. Like I mean, it's not perfect, but and I certainly have problems with it. But it's like it's J.J. Abrams is a really good filmmaker. And his pacing for this movie, the way he shoots the action, the way like everything from the Millennium Falcon to I love the lightsaber battles.
I was just gonna say
the whole trilogy. Like they had like the Millennium Falcon had weight to it. I loved how these things were like looked like they were heavy fucking swords that they were just like putting everything they had into.
The sound design, on the lightsabers, they sizzled.
Yeah,
there was like a spark that was literally coming out. I mean, we've seen these lightsabers in so many other movies, but this was the first time where it was like, wow, that's wieldy, And also, I want to say that Finn not being a Jedi, using a lightsaber as a weapon, that was pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, at first time you see it, you don't know if he's gonna be the Jedi or what, like how it's gonna really turn out. But I mean, he's like fighting a stormtrooper and he's not good with it. And this is like one of the first times that you've seen someone really have no force and just using it like as a sword, basically.
Stick.
And it's not going great. He kind of got his ass kicked a little bit by just a random stormtrooper. But I mean, shit, it is just a weapon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of the Abrams stuff. I kind of feel like, in general, I don't think J.J. Abrams is necessarily a good storyteller. Like, in the same way that I was talking about, like, does Return of the Jedi really have any character arcs? This one does more than that, but also, like, this is what J.J. Abrams is good at. Like, setting the dominoes up, like, planting mysteries, like, intriguing ideas that make you want to, like, be involved more and check things out more. Like, that stuff he's great at. But yeah, overall, I think part of what makes this movie great, or like the things that are great about it, aren't the plot, because it is basically, he's like, all right, so we'll take the framework of the other one and like that'll be the playground that I can like build off of.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like cheap to me, because he's not, this is like a weird analogy to make, but it kind of makes me think of Labyrinth, the Jim Henson movie, which is a very boring story, but they're not trying to make an interesting story. They're trying to make like the wildest puppet fantasy world you've ever seen. And they just need something to like, okay, so we all know like how Star Wars works. Like, there's good guys, they'll sneak into the bad guy base and blow it up and rescue someone. Like, so we're doing that, and also here's all the new stuff that I'm bringing in and all my new ideas.
Right. Like,
which, like, isn't necessarily the perfect way to do that, but I feel like he nailed what he was trying to do.
Right. So, yeah, with all the stuff with the First Order and the Resistance and the New Republic, like...
It's all kind
that's
of
all in the opening,
and hand waved.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the opening crawl of there's these different groups, but that's not really what the movie's about.
Yeah.
And if you really care about that stuff, you can go on Wikipedia or read the canon books, and get to know. But I mean, honestly, like, I was reading about that stuff last night, being like, or not last night, after I watched The Force Awakens, I was like, wait, what is the deal with the New Republic? Because we really don't know much, and then they basically all blow up.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe I should read about that a little bit, because like, so that was like their capitals that blew up. Okay, so like most of them died. That's why they're in such a bad place after in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like
they just don't.
It doesn't really come
address
across.
it.
Yeah. And I do think there's probably a better movie somewhere that could have taken all this stuff and done something better, but I think that a lot of that stuff is just kind of assumed, and you can fill in the pieces well enough to allow the movie to be fun and really enjoyable.
Yeah, it kind of uses a like Star Wars shorthand to be like, to just get things back into action, which in some ways also like one of the things I want to talk about this whole trilogy is like the strange back and forth nature of it, of like differing narratives and stories being told in opposition to each other a little bit. And I think that kind of starts here, honestly. because as fun as The Force Awakens is, the opening crawl is like, all right, so nothing in The Return of the Jedi really mattered because there's just still the Empire and it's something else.
It's just not called the Empire anymore. It's called the First Order. So they're out there.
It's a huge... It's a very weird way to start the movie, honestly. Right. And, like, they sell it because we get on board with, like, okay, so yeah, they're still stormtroopers. Those are the bad guys. I get it. Oh, these guys have X-Wings. They're the good guys. Okay.
And we're watching Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it's all familiar.
Totally. But, like, again, like, just thinking about the through line of all of these movies as an actual narrative work of art, it's pretty crazy to be like, all right, so here's, like, how the Emperor came to power, and then, like, here's how the Emperor was defeated, and everything that he had was completely destroyed and lost, and the good guys completely won. Next episode, never mind. All the bad guys are back. They're more powerful than the good guys again. And one of the good guys, like, one of the main characters, has just disappeared. Right. Like, it's a pretty crazy way to, like, continue this story.
Yeah.
Right.
To just be like, never mind on the last one.
And on top of that, it's like, you got a new bad guy who's the son of these two guys, but they're not together anymore.
Yeah.
Han and Leia aren't together anymore?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So.
Yeah. So, yeah, overall, though, like, I think it works. It has a ton of fun stuff. Han Solo's arc as, like, the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this movie is really interesting and compelling.
Yeah, I agree. I think it works
like,
really well.
Because, again, also by the Return of the Jedi, like, Han Solo's kind of neutralized. Like, he's still charming, but, like, he doesn't have that edge. He's just kind of like this jealous boyfriend a little bit who's like, hey, I'm cool too. And then it's really interesting to see him, like, now where, like, there's all this implied heartbreak and life, and he's kind of back where he was at the beginning of A New Hope, but also he is also, like, older and wiser and has seen stuff that, you know, he's not really the same guy. He's just sort of reverted to the state where he is comfortable.
But he also believes in the Force.
Yeah.
He's, like, on board with mythology and, like, religion and stuff. Like, he's like, all of it's true.
Yeah.
Like, it's all real.
Yeah.
And I am that guy. But I'm also not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
Because of heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting turn for his character to, like, bring him back as, like, this, like, beaten down loser who is still also a very charming rogue who also has, like, this heavy weight and burden that he's carrying through the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then, like, by turns, like, that kind of lends this, like the reveal of, like, Kylo Ren and what's going on, that just imbues him with, like, again, we were talking about, like, the Shakespearean tragedy. Like, he's like a fun, scary, wild villain where you're just like, man, this dude is nuts. He has a crazy lightsaber. He is emotionally unstable. And then to be like, he shouldn't be like this. Like, this is horrible that he's like this. Yeah. And it, like, takes this turn of, like, he's no longer, like, a fun bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, once you find out what's going on with him, you're like, this is really sad, actually. Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, he's still also a fun bad guy.
Yeah. That's what I mean, though. He's the bad guy that we needed for this time period that we're in. Where he's, like, he's not the faceless, you know, Darth Vader. He's not just blind rage or whatever. He's...
Yeah.
Even with his mask on, he's complicated and he's easily triggered, and he's doesn't have a strong backbone.
Yeah,
he's weak in a lot of ways, but he's strong in other ways.
Yeah,
and he's got power. He doesn't know how to wield it, and I don't know. It just. And then he takes his mask off, and you see, like, it's Adam Driver, and I don't know about you, but I can't help but be like, oh, poor guy, you know? Like, he's just like, yeah, but you got a lot of emotions there. Adam Driver cannot not have just a lot of emotions at all times.
Yeah, Totally.
So, anyway, so what do you guys give this one?
I gave it a 4.5 or 4 stars.
Yeah.
Thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, still some problems, but
Yeah, that's,
worked really
that's
well.
where I'd put it.
Yeah, I gave it 4 stars too. So, wow, 4 stars all around.
Yeah,
This is the one we-
nice.
So far.
Okay, on to what's probably fair to say the most controversial Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Considering, like, I think some people like the prequels, but, like, generally they're over here, you know, and then...
They're more apologists for the sequels, or for the prequels.
Yeah, or they grew up with them,
Yeah.
you know. I think there's a new generation that likes the prequels because they grew up with them, which is fair.
There's still me before you came to me and were like, hey, Phantom Menace is really bad.
Sure. Or, like, I don't know. I'm still a big Jingle All the Way fan, you know, like, grew up with it. Can't wait to watch it this Christmas. But, like, The Last Jedi, like, it was pretty, like...
Actually, there's some crossover there. Jake Lloyd. Both of them.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Hell yeah, Jake Lloyd. Anyway, so The Last Jedi, though, a lot of critics liked it. But, like...
A lot of critics loved it.
Yeah, a lot of critics loved it. Fans went crazy and hated it. There's a lot of strong opinions on it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about it. Some plot points for this one. I've got a few. General Leia orchestrates an escape from the First Order. Poe Dameron disobeys her and leads a successful and ultimately unsuccessful attack on their fleet. The Resistance goes into hyperspace, but the First Order has new technology enabling them to track hyperspace travel. Kylo Ren then leads an attack on the Resistance, and Leia's ship is blown up. She survives using the Force, but is in a coma. Vice Admiral Holdo is put in charge, and she orders the fleet to continue at their speed to stay out of reach of the First Order fighters. The First Order chases them in anticipation for their fuel to be depleted. Then on the other story, Rey meets with Luke Skywalker, who has no interest in training her. Eventually, he agrees, but has a negative outlook on the Jedi. Rey and Kylo begin to communicate through a Force connection. The truth of how Luke betrayed Kylo is revealed, and Rey confronts him before leaving to meet Kylo. Meanwhile, Poe Dameron sends Finn and Rose to Canto Bight to find a master codebreaker who can help them disable the hyperspace tracking technology. They are captured by the First Order and brought to the Supreme Lord Snoke's ship. This is Kylo Ren's boss, effectively. We didn't mention him in the last one, but yeah. Rey confronts Snoke and Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren then betrays Snoke and kills him. He encourages Rey to join him on the dark side. She declines, and they begin to fight. Admiral Holdo's plan is then revealed as she is sacrificing the fleet's ships to help the people escape to a remote planet called Crate, all incognito-like. The First Order then finds out their plan, and Holdo sacrifices herself by going through hyperspace through Snoke's command ship, destroying many ships in the First Order's fleet. All of those stories are kind of crossing over at the same time.
Yeah.
So Rey and Kylo are fighting in the chambers while it's being revealed what Holdo's plan is, and then she does the hyperspace through the ship. All of that's going to happen at the same time. And then Kylo Ren then attacks the Resistance while they're hiding out. Luke Skywalker then arrives and challenges Kylo Ren. Ren attacks him until it's revealed that Luke isn't actually on the planet. He is force projecting his image. The remaining Resistance members escape through the back of the cave, and hope for the Resistance is still alive. So yeah, like I said, this movie was incredibly controversial. I just real quick want to tell you guys that, like, in the last few days, since, like, in the last 24 hours, I should say, since The Last Jedi, or since the Rise of Skywalker came out, and people have asked me how it was, or even leading into the Rise of Skywalker before it came out, it's like, I've talked to, like, film normies, as I like to say, or movie normies, people who aren't, like, obsessed with film like we are, and it's like, you know, it's revealed to them by me that I'm a big fan of The Last Jedi. And I've gotten the reaction from probably 5 different people, like, oh, I thought everyone hated that movie. No, there's some of us who love it.
Yeah.
We're out there.
We're just not as loud as the other ones, maybe, but there's a lot to go through here, because the reasons for why people hate the movie vary. Like, some people hate the movie because it betrays what they expect characters to do. Like, where Luke Skywalker begins and how he doesn't want to train Rey, a lot of people don't buy that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't buy that Luke would go into isolation. Other bits and pieces of characters and stuff too, but
reveals like Rey's parents aren't anyone important or interesting. Everyone assumed that they would be an Obi-Wan's
grandkids. Or
there's like a ton of different.
Everyone had big theories, and Rian Johnson, the director, kind of said nah to a lot of the theories. There's also the thought that I don't know what I'm saying. There's a lot of like kind of world changing things that are brought into it, like the Holden, what's her name? Holdo maneuver, where she, you know, that's kind of potentially a universe breaking ability that was just brought into this movie. Force powers too, like Leia being able to float through space to save herself. People didn't really buy that. And then there's Star Wars fans who don't like it for those reasons. Then there's like movie people, you know, like Sean. I know you're one who's not a big fan of it, who feel like there's like plotting issues and other things I'm sure you'll bring up while we talk about this. But like, I'm pretty sure me and Cal are on the side of like, we love the movie because it brings up a lot of new ideas. And
yeah, I just rewatched it this week, and I think it is the most interesting Star Wars movie. Like, it just has so much more on its mind. It has it's like a examination of storytelling and what it means to be a good person, and how to deal with failure and what that means. It goes so far beyond what it needed to, especially as a sequel to The Force Awakens, which again was like totally great and fun. And then this is just like, all right, let's really dig down and think about a lot of this stuff. And I think it's super fascinating, pulled off excellently. Like, I basically have no complaints about the entire movie.
And I'm not fully there with you. I do have some complaints.
Yeah.
But I think I was telling Sean before we recorded this that like I feel like the stuff with Canto Bight, where they go to Canto Bight, just seems like a bad plan from the beginning. And then I think the whole setup of the story being that they're being chased, like they're going at this certain speed, and the bad guys are going to go at this certain speed, and eventually they're going to run out of gas. It just doesn't really seem like a very like solid like plot foundation.
Out of range, but not quite out of range.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like a very solid like plot foundation, and I think that there are tonal issues mixed in with the balancing of the stories, but I do think that there are problems with the structure and the pacing of the movie, but I'm right there with you where like I am able and willing to kind of just push all that away and be like, this movie's way too interesting, has way too many thoughts going on. I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I rewatched it last night.
For your first time rewatch.
Yeah, first rewatch since I saw it in theaters. I will say it. I don't know if it grew on me a little bit, but I did kind of start to appreciate certain aspects of the film. I do think like there's a lot of really great performances. Some of them definitely the best in the sequel trilogy. And I really think that Leia in this movie is probably as good as she's been since A New Hope. She like has this great commanding presence in every scene she's in. She has a really good look throughout the movie. Like there's a few pieces of imagery that stand out, like of her with that coat on that kind of covers part of her face. So this time watching it, I was able to enjoy certain parts of the movie that I wasn't able to enjoy before, because certain story elements and character beats and plotting didn't work for me in either time I saw it. But this time I was able to kind of just step back and enjoy other aspects of it. Yeah. I do agree that there are a lot of great ideas. I am fully on board with Rey's parents being no one. I'm on board with killing Snoke in this movie, even though that was another big thing that people talked about. Just like, oh, this guy Snoke's supposed to be big and important, and then you just kill him off like he's nothing. I think he's totally served his purpose for Kylo Ren's arc in this
especially
movie.
Like as Kylo Ren as a villain is like getting even more complicated and scary and conflicted. It seems even more redundant to have a guy who like we don't know him, we don't really know anything about him, and he's just there to be like, no, be more evil. It's like, yeah, we get it. Like, he's a big evil guy, and he loves evil, and like that's all we know about him, you know. And so, like in the same way that like the Emperor is great at that, Snoke is great shorthand for like, he's another one of these Emperor guys, you know, just loves evil and controlling people, and I think it's way more interesting to have Kylo Ren kill him and then be left in command of the evil army, because he's not committed and he's not a like hammy 100% evil guy. Like that's a much more interesting choice and much more compelling story, because the thing about The Last Jedi that's interesting, like we've been talking about, like the general operatic nature of Star Wars and how like there is just a lot of like kind of silly stuff that is just like just taken at face value, and like, you know, this is the slightly cheesy story that we're telling in this. And I think The Last Jedi is partially like going against that a little bit, in that it's like, no, like let's take this seriously. Like there's no such thing as like a 100% evil like monster emperor who can control the weather and just always does the most hateful thing always. Like, people are more interesting than that and more complicated. And like, what is this? What do these stories really mean to us if like these are the lessons we're taking away? That like you're only important if like you have power and you're related to other important people. Like, and I really like that it's examining that as a cultural idea. Yeah.
I really do appreciate the new trilogy for exploring those ideas, especially with Kylo Ren. And I think they needed to. I don't think they could go back and do another Darth Vader. like they did in the original trilogy. But I do think like I think the original trilogy doesn't, or in recent conversations that I've heard, the original trilogy is less about like who are people, like what makes someone who they are, what makes someone do bad things. It's not really about that. It's about the stories that we tell ourselves and like how humanity sees itself through its stories and through its characters and through its mythology. And so like, yeah, I like this comparison between like Kylo Ren and Darth Vader, I think is totally polar opposites. I think they're serving completely different purposes.
Totally agree.
And I just thought I wanted to throw that in there.
Totally.
Like as a...
Well, yeah, like Darth Vader is great at what he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Kylo Ren is absolutely not that. And it's a whole different thing. And it's the same thing with like the examination of Luke Skywalker as well. Like, that's why I think a lot of people really felt like hurt
Betrayed,
by that, because the idea with that is kind of on the flip side of that coin of like, here's a guy that we all know as like the ultimate hero, you know, like we were talking about Return of the Jedi. He's the ultimate badass. He knows what's right, he knows what to do, he's like calm and confident, and he has conflict still in Return of the Jedi, but he's on the straight and narrow. And then to take that character and then be like, okay, so like we all want to be that. We all want to be the hero. And we all will do that sometimes. Also, all of us are going to fuck up.
Yeah.
What does that look like when you are perfect and then you're not?
Right. And especially when it's impacting someone that you love.
Yeah.
You know, so like you fuck up and that has a direct effect on your son or daughter, niece or nephew, or someone that you love. Yeah. And that sets them on a bad path. Like, it's like abuse.
Like Luke Skywalker ruined a kid's life.
Yeah.
You know, like we were talking about like how Anakin killing those kids doesn't land the way it should because we don't care about him. And then The Last Jedi is like, Luke's not evil. He doesn't kill kids, but he fucked up so bad it ruined a kid's life.
And he almost did. Like, that's part of the thing. Is like, you know, with Return of the Jedi, he was teetering. You know, he was never going to go to the dark side. You know, Sean said that before, he didn't fully buy it. But, like, that was a plot of the movie, was them trying to bring him over to the dark side. And there was a little bit of hatred there. Like, it was there, but then he was able to deny it. Yeah. And I think the same thing happened in, you know, that conflict with Luke and Ben, where Ben Solo, where he saw the future, he saw the hatred, and he was like, I could save so many people if I kill this kid right now. Yeah. No, that's not right. And then, but it was already too late. Yeah. And everything fell apart because of it.
Yeah. And so, like, just dealing with that fallout and, like, regret and the fact that there's nothing, like, it's not up to him to fix it even. Like, you know,
his masters, like, two people that trained him, what did they do when they fucked up? What happened when the Jedi Order fell apart?
Yeah,
both of them went into exile.
Disappeared. Yeah, and so, but that is, I can totally get, like, it is a pretty, like, bold choice. Like it's, I don't even know, like, a comparison to make, because it's so out of the box to just have, you know, somebody who is basically, like, an 80s action hero. You know,
right? It'd be like if the new Rambo movie came out, but Rambo was dealing with the fact that he's killed people in the past.
Yeah, and it's about him, like
First Blood.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but totally, and that is about First Blood. But like if Last Blood, the new one, was like, well, yeah, I went to war and that was bad.
I did have any meaning at all.
Right.
Like,
yeah, and he's like working in a soup kitchen and like going to protests, and he never like has an action sequence in the whole thing.
Right.
It's like, that I did not see that for Rambo. You know?
I didn't think a Rambo movie would do that.
Yeah,
and ultimately that might be the big problem with the movie, with like at least with this fan base, is that it might not be just one thing or two things, but like there were a lot of bold choices. Yeah. You know, like all the Force stuff that was new, like Leia saving herself and the Force projector that Luke does at the end, and
Yoda being able to summon lightning.
Yeah, all these new Force things, like by themselves, aren't a big deal.
Yeah.
And to me, they still aren't a big deal because I kind of think all the Force powers are kind of made up.
Yeah.
Like they're all
they all kind of don't make sense.
I think the problem you run into with that is especially with the new one, you start piling these things on top of each other, and now all of a sudden, and this is something the comic book and superheroes, the problem that they run into all the time. You keep piling these powers on top of each other until you have a person that's so wildly powerful that it's just no longer has any meaning or relevance to the story, as opposed to like back to Yoda, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like the things that Yoda was saying to Luke, like that's what's important in this story. That's what's important about the Force and their magical powers.
Yeah.
It's not this like what new like super powerful. How can we top ourselves with the Force powers in this one?
Yeah.
And you know, I definitely have problems with this movie, but it's getting a little ahead of myself. But especially the new one, like really pushes those way too far.
Yeah.
And
well, okay, so but what I appreciate about the new Force powers in The Last Jedi is, first of all, Luke like directly repudiates, like Rey is like, you know, he asks Rey what the Force is. She's like, it's like it gives you powers.
You lift up rocks, you know. Yeah.
And like he's like, that's not the point of all of this.
See, I feel like going back to what you were saying about what Yoda and what Yoda's saying, I feel like Luke was like, I thought what Luke was doing with Rey, even though it was like pessimistic about what the Force is, to me it was like almost just as important.
That was a nice moment for sure. Like, what was his line? It was so good. Everything, like when he says everything you've said is wrong, or
he said something like, it's amazing. Yeah. Everything you said was wrong.
Yeah.
But and so along with that, like they do bring up these new powers that we haven't really seen before. Like there's the Force, I don't know what to call it, like the conversation.
The connection.
Which that's one you've kind of seen before, where
like
they can,
in some variety.
Luke and
Leia have a connection.
One, and then Darth Vader kind of says a thing to Luke.
Totally, and that feels like a natural evolution. Mm-hmm. But then, Yoda calling down the lightning, like controlling the weather. I think that works for me because they've already said like, these aren't superpowers to fight bad guys. Like that's not the point. Like it's not about that. It's, you know, it's like a participation in the balance of the universe, and it's they like return to this idea that this is more like meaningful and mystical and solemn than just like I want to be able to like, you know, be the Green Lantern, you know.
Right.
And so that. In the whole movie, anytime there's like a new idea or a new Force power or whatever, it's never presented as like, aha, this will be the Deus Ex Machina that like I can use to fight the bad guys. It is like, it's a natural extension.
One of them is the Force projection is the kind of the.
Yes, but it's ending. Also, I mean, it's the opposite though. Like
he doesn't actually defeat anybody. It's like a trick.
But yeah, it's the trick that supposedly allows them to escape, and you know, he all of a sudden Luke's there, and he doesn't get blown up by the new AT-ATs, and then and then so he supposedly buys enough time for them to find another exit.
Yeah.
Your point is still.
But yeah,
I get what you're saying, but that one is
he's not using
is
teleporting to win a lightsaber fight. He's like, all of those powers come out of like genuine moments of human connection and are like born out of what those characters are going through.
It would only work, like Luke's force projection would only work. It only works because Kylo wants to fight him so bad. Like if it was anyone else other than Kylo, it wouldn't have slowed him down. Like if it was just the Imperial fleet marching toward him, like Luke's thing wouldn't have worked. But because Kylo was like, I want to go out there and fight him one-on-one and defeat him for my sake because it's me and him, the Last Jedis, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it works.
And I think because Luke, what that moment is really about for him is finally confronting his failure face to face in the only way he reasonably can. And it's not about fighting and winning and being a badass and being perfect anymore. He shows up to just be to just finally address it and be there. And
I guess that kind of gets at the general problems I have with the movie is that that's all great. There's some great ideas there for sure. And there's even some that's a great character moment for them to have. But it comes at the expense of a believable, well thought out, well executed, well developed world, in my opinion. You know, and that's the thing that happens throughout the movie. All of their whole plan that they go on to the Cantabite, is that was that whole plan is just so rapidly presented and and taken at face value and taken all these like huge leaps in logic are taken so quickly and bought into, and I'm watching it and I'm just like, whoa, hold on a second. What's going on here? And they just like move on to this bizarre, as a lot of people call it, the side quest of the movie, which to me is not the side quest. It is the driving plot of the film, where they're going off on this mission to save the day, while Poe's back butting heads with Holdo. And you know, they're told there's only one person who can hack this system. When they get there, they can't get to him, but they just happen to bump into someone else who can hack the system for them, and then and on and on. And it just the whole thing just develops in a very improbable way, to the point where it's very frustrating. For me, it was very frustrating to see these characters just go off on this adventure and have it all come crashing down around them, and then by the end expect some type of redemption from the potentially hundreds or thousands of people that they are fully responsible for killing. And that's
my only interjection is that I think the movie agrees with you.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, I mean, the movie, I agree, Sean, because like I'm watching this movie and, you know, fucking Finn is laying out the plan, Rose, they're talking about it, and I'm going, this is fucking stupid. Like, this plan doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Like, this plan doesn't make any sense. And then they go for the plan, and it doesn't work out. And they meet this jackhole who...
But, like, also, for the... Like, the way the plan is presented, not only do they, like, rush through it, there's, like, quick editing in the way they're explaining it. Yeah. Like, it's like, blah, 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 we're doing this, blah. It's really rushed.
I mean, I think like, a big part of it is that they are very desperate. Like, there's not a lot of options. So, as characters, as characters, they're willing to like go along with like this is the only plan we have, so we got to go with it. It's like every other Star Wars movie where there's only one plan, so they have to go along with it.
Yeah.
But it's a terrible plan, and we all know it's a terrible plan. It doesn't make sense. It's a terrible plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, they meet this other jackhole who can, code break whatever, and to me he represents something different. To me he represents like moral ambiguity. He's the guy who goes, hey, good and bad isn't really a thing, good and bad is on both sides,
but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie where he goes you're wrong about that, and he's like, maybe, but because he is moral ambiguity. He's just a guy who he doesn't know if there's good or bad. But in that moment, that makes Finn decide that he does believe that there's good and bad, and he goes for good. And he, at that moment, decides he's part of this bigger team, and he stops running away from stuff, because up until that point, he's been running.
Yeah. I also just want to point out, like, just on the side of, like, the movie knowing this is a bad plan and trying to make you feel bad about it, like, I don't know if you remember, like, the reason their plan fails and they don't get a hold of, like, the code breaker they're trying to get with the special pin is just because they parked their spaceship in the wrong place. And they get
towed or whatever. They get arrested because...
They don't even get towed. They get arrested for a parking violation.
Exactly. But, like, that the stupidness of that is the point. That they are so, like, all right, like, yeah, totally, we're the good guys, we'll go do the thing.
In any other Star Wars movie, it would have worked out. But this is the one Star Wars movie where it doesn't work out.
Yeah, because they're careless and because, like...
But if you compare that to what you talked about earlier, the Return of the Jedi scene where they're laying out the plan for the Death Star, that's a great scene. Like, many Banthas died to obtain this information, and they lay out, like, all the different... areas where they're going, that have to be, or all the different things that have to happen in order for this mission to succeed. And you're on board, you understand the mission, it all makes sense, and it's really well done and executed. This it just doesn't do that. It's just like, you don't need an explanation. Just go along with it. And
right. But see, I think the movie though too. Again, part of me is like, clearly the movie didn't succeed fully with what it was trying to do, because a lot of people are not satisfied. But I think the movie was trying to do like a twist. Like, it was trying to flip it on you of like, hey, these characters are going off on this adventure, this thing that it's a bad idea and no one's on board with, but like, actually, like, they're not doing the right thing. The right thing is actually happening over here off screen. They're actually like sneaking off, and if they hadn't gone on that adventure, all those people would have been okay. Like, thousands of people. I mean, I don't know how many people were on that ship,
it's like,
ships and stuff. But
they
like,
say something about like there's 400 or 500 people on those 3 ships that are escaping, plus all the people that died in the attack of the Dreadnought. I don't know how many. So I just watched it yesterday.
What's the Dreadnought?
The Dreadnought's the one where Poe wanted to blow it up, and Leia said, "That's an order. Don't you return? That's an order."
But like, so the flip though, I'm just saying that the structural flip of the plot is that the characters that you're following that you like were doing the wrong thing, and that's like a bold choice for a blockbuster movie. To have the characters that you're following and you're supposed to be into their story. You're supposed to be following and be invested in what they're doing. But the movie knows they're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. All of the, like, 5 main characters, like Rey and Finn and Poe and Luke and Kylo, all of their arcs are about failure. And none of them succeed at any of their... Like, Luke is more like stewing in his past failure, but all the rest of them fail at the big thing they attempt. And, like, that's specifically what the movie is about. So, you're not wrong. Like, it is a bad plan, and it is, like, presented hastily, and it is, like, chaotic and terrible, but I think that's because they like that is what the movie is about, is like,
I guess like the problem is that, again, like you're just never on board for any of these plans. You're supposed to be with these characters hoping that they succeed, and you find yourself like just questioning every move that they make.
It's like that thing where you watch a horror movie and you're going, hey, don't go in that room.
Yeah.
The killer's gonna get you, and then they go in and get it. You want the horror movie to be smarter than you.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're watching it and you're smarter than the movie.
Yeah.
But
like,
it turns out though the movie is trying to hold hands with you and you're not holding its hand.
Yeah. Yeah, like the big turnaround, like the big reveal really is like the moment where you like get confirmation that Holdo, who's like come off as kind of like abrasive, you're on Poe's side of like, tell me what's going on, like, you know, wanting to be in control and have like some involvement in what's going on. But instead, like, she's pretty much legitimized and like, yeah, like, you just lost most of our fleet. You were demoted by Leia a second before she was put in a coma, and I have this good plan that, like, blah, blah, blah. Her plan also fails because of the actions of our heroes, but then she's, like, the only one who's, like, I will find a way to, like, at least buy us some more time to fix some of this failure in, like, one of the most spectacular sequences, which... Yeah, man, I love that so much.
Yeah, that seems awesome.
Which also kind of has its universe-breaking implications.
Who cares?
I don't think so, though. Like, because the other thing about it, like, I mean, apparently no one has done this before.
I don't buy that for a second.
I mean...
1,000 generations and... I mean, they know the destructive power of going into hyperspace and running into something. Like they talk about it in A New Hope, and
yeah,
I mean, it's just never addressed why you wouldn't do something like that in this universe.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And like putting that front and center so it could potentially be a problem that the universe has always had with, if you introduce hyperspace, why don't you just do things like...
Well, don't they mention that in the Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
They actually say, like, why don't we do the Holdo maneuver? And it's like, because it's chaotic and unpredictable and probably not going to be successful.
Yeah, whoever replies is like, that's a 1 in a million chance.
Yeah, and like she kind of did that.
Kind of.
I mean, it probably was, and we should probably move on to the next movie.
I think we should.
But,
yeah, totally.
But
yeah.
Anyway,
we could sit here and we could sit here and argue about the physics of Star Wars. But
I'm just saying, I understand those problems, and again, it's not just that one.
And what I was saying before,
it's a whole long list of like, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's a strange. I don't know if I buy into that. Is that? How does that? Why would that? You know, like when you're doing that through the whole movie, it's frustrating. It takes you out of the movie. And again, like what I said earlier, the rewatch of this movie, I knew I wasn't going to like all those things. I knew I was going to, have problems with them. And because of that, I was able to just kind of put those in the background, maybe because I watched the 3 prequels and a lot of other bad Star Wars movies before that. I was kind of able to put that in the back of my head and enjoy other parts of the movie. Yeah. But especially the first watch, it's very hard and very distracting to get past this.
Right, and that's what I was trying to say before, is that, like, for whatever reason, like, there's a sector of us who are willing and able to just buy into these issues. Not issues, but, like, these bold choices, let's call them. Yeah. But it seems like the movie fails because there's too many bold choices. And it's like, okay, like what I was talking about before, that's like this plot switch where you're not supposed to like what the main characters are doing, but you're following them anyway. But this other guy who you're not supposed to like is actually doing the right thing. It's like, structural thing. It worked for me, but it's like it's a pretty weird concept, and it's like they had too many of those. These like bold choices that they add up, and it's hard for people to buy into.
Yeah.
I do think like on the rewatch, it did become a worthy Star Wars movie to me. I will say that. Like it I do think the ideas and the things that it was trying to do, it in the end it took its place in the Star Wars.
And I just admire boldness too. Like that's part of my thing is that like I'd so much would rather have boldness than boringness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Justice
completely.
League over
and also
Man of Steel. No, I would go Man of Steel, 100%. No, Man of Steel. Batman v Superman.
Oh, yeah.
Batman v Superman. Man, that movie was swinging for the fences. It was going for a home run. It had big ideas.
He was going for a grand slam.
Yeah, it kind of shit the bed, but you know, Justice League. I mean, maybe it was a better movie in some ways, but also it was like vapid nothingness. So
I was talking about this with my brother to bring in the curricular Star Wars movies. We were just talking about generally ranking the Star Wars movies, and I was like, obviously, the Star Wars Christmas special is insane. It doesn't count. It's garbage. But it is... They put so much effort into how bad that movie is. I think that is a more interesting movie than something like Solo, which is just like, here's the stuff you expect. And that's all callbacks and nothing really that complicated or challenging or anything. And I kind of feel that way a little bit about The Last Jedi, that it's like it is swinging for the fences on so many levels that I absolutely love it. And we should talk about The Rise of Skywalker because also, in addition to me thinking it's probably the most interesting and one of my favorite Star Wars movies, The Last Jedi, it's kind of a bad penultimate episode, and I legitimately feel pretty bad for J.J. Abrams that he had to follow that up as well, because again, just talking about like the back and forth of these movies, that The Force Awakens is sort of like the end of Return of the Jedi doesn't really matter, everything's bad again. And here's the new emperor and like this new mysterious girl, who is she related to, and here's what's going on now. And then The Last Jedi is like, Snoke's dead, the mysterious girl is nobody, she's not related, that's boring, that's a bad idea. And just kind of like shuts down all these narrative things that The Force Awakens started, and then goes off on this like long, again, super compelling to me, just meditation on like grief and failure and like what it means to be a good person and how to live with like having or not having a destiny or how you perceive yourself in the world. And then it's like, all right, now it's time for the final episode of this 40-year saga.
right,
Back to you, JJ.
9 movies. Yeah, like,
and it's just like honestly, I feel pretty bad for him, and because not only that, so first of all, I just have this image. It's like the two metaphors I think of is like, I think The Last Jedi knocked it out of the park, and then J.J. Abrams was the one that was like, I'll go get the ball back because you knocked it out of the park and we were playing a game. So yeah. I'll go get it so we can finish our game that we were all playing together. Yeah. And then, or the other thing I think about is there's the Lonely Island song with Michael Bolton, where it's like it's just all about like going to the club and getting fucked up, and it's like this pretty intense rap, and then like the Michael Bolton hook comes in and he's just singing about how he thinks Pirates of the Caribbean is an awesome movie, and then it just keeps cutting back to like the guys trying to be badasses.
Well, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, just
we're back in the club.
Keep their thing going, because like I don't know what to do with that, so we're back in the club and having drinks, and like again, I think The Last Jedi is great, but I do kind of get that vibe of just now J.J. Abrams has to come back in and be like, so yeah, the Emperor, yeah, the Emperor is here, and yeah, so they all got to team up against the Emperor because, like, you know, just like it's
right.
like Rian Johnson did kind of leave him out to dry.
Right.
Just shut down all these things, killed off the entire rebellion except for 20 people.
Right. Snoke's dead.
Yeah.
All these threads are just closed because Rian Johnson was like, it'd be more interesting to not have that be the case.
And then even beyond that, The Force Awakens is like all about saying goodbye to Han. The Last Jedi is all about saying goodbye to Luke. And then Carrie Fisher died.
Right.
And like the rumor is that like the third movie, like Colin Trevorrow was going to do the third movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the rumor is like part of the reason he left is because he, like, his whole movie, his whole idea, his whole script was all about Leia.
Right.
And then they're like, whatever, a year and a half, 2 years away from like the locked and loaded release date, and then like your main character can't do anything.
Right.
And so that's like the rumor.
Is that what happened?
Well, clearly it happened. Yeah.
Like
So what they did was
he left before she died. Is that not
did
right?
he?
I don't
in
my head.
But either way, that's just one more thing that like J.J. Abrams is kind of left holding the bag after The Last Jedi, and also Carrie Fisher is dead, so you just don't have her there, and she was like gonna be the heart and soul of this movie, and instead you're just left with like random bits and pieces of this story that he had tried to set up,
and they try to use the Carrie Fisher stuff. Like, clearly this, they wanted her to be Rey's master, and they had that as part of the plot, and they made it work to the best of their ability, but those scenes do feel like
she's stitched together.
Yeah, like it feels like she's in another movie saying other bits of dialogue that might be from something else.
Yeah. And so like I ended up really enjoying The Rise of the Skywalker for what it is. But I think part of that is tempered by the fact that it must have been so hard walking into that movie late without the like crown jewel of this movie, and without all these other narrative avenues that you had set up. And so some of the things that he does kind of repudiate The Last Jedi in super direct, kind of like rude seeming ways. And like I leaned over to my wife like early on. I was like, if they end up making Rey actually just like related to one of the magic families, I'll be so pissed. And then it happens, and I was like, that sucks. Also, I don't know. I get it, you know. I think that's terrible that they.
Should we do the plot and then? And then.
Okay, let's go over the plot because. Okay, so this is the new movie. It just came out. We kind of jumped into it already, but obviously we've been doing spoilers the whole time. But plot points. Kylo Ren finds Palpatine. He's still alive and joins him in hopes of acquiring his massive fleet of Star Destroyers. Palpatine reveals he has a giant fleet. He can give Kylo Ren anything he wants. Rey, Finn, Poe, and Chewbacca go in search for Palpatine. They have a whole quest where they find a Sith dagger that has a inscription that needs to be translated. Chewbacca is kidnapped and needs to be rescued. Rey confronts Kylo Ren, and it's revealed that she is a Palpatine. She's his great niece. Rey runs away and hides out at Luke's old hideout, Arch 2, and talks to Ghost Luke, who encourages her to stay on the good side and be a light on the Force. Kylo Ren has another confrontation with Rey, this time at a Star Destroyer, and he then has conversation with his dad, Han Solo, and he kind of transforms back into Ben Solo. Ultimately, they go and confront Palpatine, and there's a huge battle. Reinforcements from around the universe show up and destroy the Palpatine Star Destroyer fleet. And, ultimately, Rey defeats Palpatine and kind of starts to die herself, but then Kylo Ren sacrifices himself to save her. And she's kind of the Last Jedi. So, yeah, those are the plot points.
Yeah.
I don't really know where we should start, honestly.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I
mean, Sean, you just saw it. You saw it a few hours ago.
Yeah. A bunch of hours ago now. Yeah. I guess my hot take is there were moments that I liked. There was a lot of character pieces that were really good and interesting. Really great action sequences that I really enjoyed. I really liked a lot of the lightsaber battles were really good for reasons that we were talking about earlier. But ultimately, it was just a baffling movie that was pretty messy, made some bizarre decisions that I think were entirely unnecessary, and again, like he had a hard time. I don't know how you would follow up The Last Jedi, but introducing Palpatine was I am baffled by the thought process of that. The idea that you would have to have Rey be a Palpatine was utterly meaningless in this movie.
Totally.
And
that's part
honestly,
of what was so frustrating.
You could literally write that whole thing out and it wouldn't change a thing.
They bring it in just to be like, no, she is.
Yeah.
One of
I don't
these
know.
people.
Was that they were scared of the fans type thing?
I don't know, but then like her whole story from that point on and all of her interactions with Palpatine, it doesn't actually affect the story.
It wasn't like, you're my niece, so you have to be this way. It was like,
yeah,
I mean, anyone can be tempted by the dark side. It could have been anyone. Like, it still could have been anyone. She still could have been.
Your friends are dying out there.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
anyone would be tempted by that.
Right.
Yeah, and the only advantage I can think is like this sort of metaphorical, literary comparison between her and Ben. Like my wife and I were talking all about like sort of the yin and yang of them, and the fact that he is from the good lineage and he turned out bad, and she's from the bad lineage and is sort of naturally drawn to the light.
Yeah,
but that's not even like addressed or brought up in the movie. That's just like we're
right. You guys are digging into it.
Yeah, but like
it just for me, like, it didn't make sense on like a structural level where. I mean, we all saw, I don't know if I don't know if you saw it, but like James Bond, like Spectre, the newest James Bond movie. It was revealed that Christoph Waltz was behind everything bad that's ever happened in James Bond's life. Mm-hmm. And that's like towards the climax of the movie, but it's like, it's a reveal, but you don't buy it. It's like, what? No. I mean, I watched these other movies. Like, I don't think so. And the same thing happens with this one. Except it's in the first 10 minutes, and you're like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just watched the other ones.
Uh-huh.
There were no hints.
Yeah.
None
of that.
No hints.
And I kind of wonder if J.J. Abrams was like, well, I had this whole thing planned out with Snoke.
Right. Yeah.
And now Snoke's dead. Who do I do that with?
Right.
Well, I think like in those first 10 minutes, you do see like a vat of abandoned Snoke clones, and I do think that was kind of J.J. Abrams being like, that was my idea, by the way. I know we're not doing that now, but just for the record, like Snoke was like an Emperor clone minion. So anyway, I know that's not happening anymore, but
I needed to like really put it out there that
that's what Snoke was. Anyway, back to the Emperor. And so like that's a lot of this stuff does feel like him kind of out of desperation, just picking up threads that maybe he left before or ideas that he had during The Force Awakens.
Even small
and bringing
things.
them back, whether or not they really make sense.
Even small things like in the first movie, Kylo Ren's wearing his helmet, like the whole movie. He only takes it off in a few key moments. But then like right away in The Last Jedi, Snoke is like, take that stupid thing off.
Yeah.
And so he takes it off and then he destroys it in the elevator, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
The first thing that happens in this movie is like, well, actually, I kind of like that thing. The helmet was my idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring that back.
Yeah.
And then like in at one point in The Last Jedi, they were fighting over the lightsaber. It's Kylo Ren and Rey are fighting over the lightsaber, and it's symbolic, and then they break this lightsaber in half, and they destroy, you know, the past, and there's all this symbolic stuff going on there, and then he just well, we'll just repair that lightsaber, and and now that lightsaber's back, and I feel like there was a bunch of that stuff throughout the movie that
just like kind of
that was awkward.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know who to blame for that, but
and like, a lot of that stuff didn't really bother me. Like, like, you know, I can kind of like go along with that. You know, like, oh, you know, in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren's feeling more conflicted, and he's like trying to deal with maybe being a relatable, real person instead of just pretending to be Darth Vader. And then in this one, he's like kind of recommitting himself to like, no, like, I want to be 100% evil. But yeah, it does just come off as like, like I said, like, okay, I don't know what that was. Anyway, back to Star Wars. Here's his cool helmet back, and here's you know, the iconic lightsaber back.
I don't know. I didn't really love this movie. It just seemed like it was like cobbled together in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Someone else should talk.
It feels very cobbled together, and like I don't know if it was me. I don't know what it was, but there was something about. It seemed like every new location they go to in this movie, I'm like, I have to like, okay, wait, what are they doing? What's the goal here? Why are they in this place? And like, I have to reassess everything. And I don't know if I just like was bored with it, or if it was just clumsily put together.
Yeah.
And it like had this weird, like they have this dagger and they have to find the clues, and I wasn't following that. That's like.
Yeah. There were a few things I liked. I did really like C-3PO and how he had a pretty big role, and it was like funny, but it was also like purposeful, and how like that whole bit of him being like, oh boy, I wish we could just get into my memory and I could tell you guys, but we can't. So that sucks.
Yeah.
And it's like, and everyone's just looking at him like, you asshole. Like, you should just tell us, you know. Yeah. Like I like that a lot.
That is, but he's an old friend. He's one of my oldest friends.
Oh, friend. He's my oldest friend.
But ultimately though, I did really like how the Kylo Ren and Rey stories ended up. Like I thought Adam Driver was great in this movie, and that scene with Han Solo, where I was a little I was, you know, kind of like, not sure about bringing him back. Mm-hmm. There's already so many ghosts in this movie. I was kind of like, I don't know. You knew there was going to be a Luke ghost. Leia was like basically a ghost. It was like, okay. But I'm not sure if Han even was a ghost. Like we talked about this earlier today. Like
we've never seen anyone that didn't have the Force.
Ben Solo like says that he's a memory. Like he tells him to his face, like.
So that was an inner monologue type.
I think so.
But
my thing about that scene though, I think that scene worked great the way it is. Loved it, but also thinking about it today, that's definitely a scene that 100% was written for Carrie Fisher. That was supposed to be her scene.
Right.
Like, because she dies right then, so it would totally make sense for her to show up and have a real moment with him.
Yeah.
But just couldn't do it. So
but what did you guys think of her in this movie? I thought she looked really good and she sounded really good. I didn't have any problems with her.
I mean, that was really her.
Right. All of that was filmed, I think. I mean, I'm speculating, but I think all of it was filmed from The Last Jedi. All of her scenes
were like cobbled together from deleted footage from the other movies.
Rian Johnson was all about, like, I remember when The Last Jedi came out, and he was like, I had all this footage of Carrie Fisher because he was tempted to just kill her off in that moment. Like, when the ship blew up, and it was like, she died. Why didn't you just let her die? You know? And a lot of people still complain about that. I had kids in class complaining about that to me today. Yeah. And he was like, well, I had all this footage of Carrie Fisher doing good stuff, doing good work. Yeah. Why would I just kill her off when I could tell more story with her?
Yeah.
You know? And so I think what happened was they took that footage from the last movie and just like put it in another movie.
Yeah, and like built scenes around the stuff they had of her.
Yeah.
So I don't think, like, I could be wrong. There might be some, like, you know, CGI finagling, but I think in general that's really her, not like them making a facsimile of her.
Right. That totally makes sense about about Harrison Ford, though.
Definitely.
So like that, it's another one of those things where like it totally is a messy, weird patchwork movie.
I love the dialogue there, and that's part of it where like he goes, you know, Kylo Ren's dead. I'm talking to Ben Solo, and like then it cuts to Adam Driver, and I'm like, yep, like just look at Adam Driver's face, like he's emotional, like that is Ben Solo right there. That's not Kylo Ren anymore. Like, and you could just see it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I liked all of that. I really was into Kylo Ren's arc, and I didn't love that Rey was Palpatine, but I also liked what she went through, and the ultimate conclusion that they all came to. I thought that was a pretty good story. Yeah, like, I was into all of that.
Again, like Return of the Jedi style, like to kind of go along with like what you're saying about like how they're just kind of like going places and doing a bunch of stuff, and it's like fun to watch, but also not necessarily very moving all the time. Like I think this movie also, none of the characters besides Rey and Kylo Ren have arcs or emotional through lines. They're all just like doing stuff and accomplishing things and saying exposition and like you know, making friends. But like we even like find out more about Poe's backstory and like see more of his real life, but he doesn't like go through anything in the movie, really. You know, like
he's the same guy.
He's the same guy. He becomes like the head of the entire fleet.
Right. He does have a little bit of character stuff in that where he's like I really thought they were gonna show up, and then they showed up, you know. But like his faith wavered a little bit, but it wasn't like an arc.
Yeah.
I was really kind of hoping he was gonna you know, end up with Finn at the end.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They seem to have a lot of chemistry between the three movies. So I was kind of hoping that it was going to be like, hey, can I kiss you? And she was like, no. And he's like, okay, well, I'll kiss him then.
Yeah, I feel like both of them are like so like upsettingly charismatic that I feel like they are flirting or in love with everybody and vice versa. Like, anytime anyone's talking to Finn or Poe, I'm like, they're about to make out. And so, like, which, that was actually, that's one of my other, like, big complaints is Rose Tico from The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
Like,
that sucks.
I thought it was a really fun character, really interesting, a great, like, companion to Finn. And, like, they end on this kiss, which is kind of surprising in The Last Jedi. It's like, oh, I didn't know if I necessarily saw that coming.
It felt like that kiss felt like it was more of Rose kissing him and him being like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about you that way. Yeah. But it was like, it was interesting, though.
Yeah,
it was
and
like,
it felt like a genuine moment.
Yeah.
And then, so we go from that to, like, she's still around, but now she's, like, not part of the club anymore.
Right.
And like,
hey, last chance to get on the Falcon. Nah, I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
I'm, the Star Wars fan base, they got real pissed at me in the last movie, and I got off social media because of it. Toxic fan base.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna be in this movie, but, like, over on the side.
I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna piss anyone off.
Yeah. I'll exist here and I'll look at computers.
It sucks.
Like, that sucks pretty hard.
Like,
but then
Dominic Moynihan.
What was he doing in that movie?
Yeah, when he showed up, it was very surprising.
It's like, yeah, Dominic
Moynihan. Weird.
Charlie?
Oh, that's why I did Fellowship of the Ring, too.
I thought that's why he did Lost.
I did both.
So yeah, the fact that she was still in it, but you don't get a beat on their relationship. Like, they still just seem like, all right, we are pals. We both love hanging out in this forest and kind of talking to each other sometimes.
Yeah.
And then, like, he goes off, and then, there's always been, like, some tension between Finn and Rey, and maybe some tension between Finn and Poe, and then he meets that other ex-stormtrooper, and it's like, oh, maybe they are a thing, and then at the end it's like, nope, we didn't really think of a story for Finn. He's just a cool guy.
Right.
It's just a cool guy, now he has even cooler hair.
Yeah, that's what's, like, such a bummer to me, is that, like, I felt like he went through a lot in The Last Jedi, and I felt like he went through a pretty big character arc. I was just talking to Derek about this on Letterboxd, and he was saying that he felt like Finn didn't do anything in The Last Jedi. And I'm like, well, I felt like he did a bunch, I felt like he actually went through a pretty serious arc. I really feel like he didn't do anything in this movie, like, really nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's the whole thing of, like, they try and drop this thing of, like, he wants to tell something to Rey right before he dies.
Yeah.
They never really get back to that.
I think it's that he has the Force.
I think it is, too, but...
They didn't really talk about, though.
Yeah, they plant that seed, and then they're like, this seed will grow eventually.
Well, they got that whole thing where Poe's going, what? Like, you know something that Rey knows? Yeah, I do. I think it's the Force, but yeah, they don't really go too far into it.
Yeah, like it's a weird, like, moment of tension that is never really resolved, and it's just like, oh, I guess that's your story, is that you almost told Rey you can kind of use the Force a little bit.
That's bizarre. I don't know. Would they have cut that story out, but then leave that piece before they get sucked under?
Because they clearly had enough time in the movie to, like, because it's not just that he almost gets sucked under. They talk about it when they get sucked under, and then later on they're about to get killed, and Poe's going, hey, so what were you going to tell Rey earlier?
Yeah.
You didn't need to have any of that if you weren't going to pay it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because he has, like, not much else to do.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Messy movie. Movie. Okay, so we need to wrap this up.
Totally.
Satisfying climax? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, okay, so it wraps up 9 movies now.
Yeah, okay, so the thing is, I think bringing back Palpatine is a weird choice, especially to do it in the opening crawl, again, in, like, kind of weird, disjointed conflict with previous movies, where they're just like, Palpatine's back, And
Yeah.
let's just dive into that.
I read that and it didn't even register in my brain. I full on read Palpatine. Nothing happened in my head. And then I saw him. I'm like, oh, Palpatine's back.
Yeah.
It was so.
I read
weird.
the opening crawl and was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
But here we go.
That said,
Register as a possibility.
that said, once like the climax kind of starts and it gets into like Rey and Kylo Ren, they're interacting with Palpatine. You kind of get a sense of his plan that like this is kind of this penultimate moment of like if he can corrupt this one Jedi, like make her give in to her hatred. I'm not even sure if it's like he says something about like if you do it, if you kill me in anger, then like I'll be able to possess you. So like either I get to kill the entire like all of the rebels, I'll successfully do that, or you become a monster and there will be no more Jedi left. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty great like rock in a hard place catch-22.
It wasn't introduced until like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and then it kind of resolves like, well, she doesn't like kill him. Really, he burns himself up.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just like they present this choice that she has to make, and then she doesn't make the choice, and then it still resolves.
Yeah.
So it's like morally unsatisfying. You don't feel like, yeah, she did the right thing. She found a way out of it. She's just like, well, he got so pissed he exploded, and she lived happily ever after.
But that could be a statement on like the hubris of the whole thing, right? Because he got too up in his own grill, and it all fell apart for him.
Yeah. But I do like. I know some people. How did you guys feel about the kiss?
What kiss?
Between Kylo Ren and Rey.
Oh,
I think it would have been better without it.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah,
it was fine.
I was totally sold on it, but just other folks I've been talking to.
I guess like
I was good with it because I was kind of always. I kind of wanted them to get together, but I also couldn't imagine them being together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought they had a lot of chemistry, so I was like, okay, like, just because I've seen other movies, when people have this much chemistry, it seems like they usually make out.
Yeah.
And get together.
Yeah, and that was definitely in my head. Like,
yeah, right. And so and so then when he saved her and they're sitting that close, I was like, well, they gotta kiss.
Yeah.
Like, this is like what happens in movies. And then they kissed, and I was like, okay. And then he died, and I was like, oh, interesting choice, actually. Yeah. Like, I thought that was maybe one of the most interesting things that happened in the movie.
Yeah.
I guess for me, it was just like, it would have been nice to not have... To have a relationship that doesn't have to have that type of...
Well, they had that with everyone that Finn ever met.
Well,
or Poe ever met, too, I guess.
That's just
I guess is why I want Poe and Finn to make out.
Yeah.
I think the reason it worked for me is because it was like less sexy than it was like they just understood each other.
Yeah.
And they kind of had this passing moment of like we did it, like we saved each other and the galaxy, but also like, it's not meant to be. It still is this sort of tragic thing. Right. But also the very final moment where she like talks, she's talking with the lady on Tatooine, and like, you can see it coming from a mile away, but still, like, when she like says like her last name is Skywalker, I think that is obviously like a tribute to like Luke and Leia, who were these parental figures to her, but also I think it's kind of like she took his name. Like they didn't have the chance for like an actual relationship, but I like the idea of it. Like, it was like we are both finally on the level and like through this thing, and like we could have been together if things were different, but instead she takes his name, which also along with like forcing her to be a Palpatine in this one, it is again another weird back and forth of like, she's nobody. Oh, she's a Palpatine, but she's choosing not to be a Palpatine. She's choosing to be a Skywalker.
Yeah.
That still is something, it's kind of a muddled message about like the whole idea of like
You can
whether
be
or not you're somebody or whether or
Right.
not your bloodline matters, because ultimately she does sort of make the choice of like, I want to be a Skywalker.
right. And ultimately, you can be whoever you want to be. I think
Yeah.
is what it's trying to say. But
And I also like the idea of, there were rumors going around that like maybe Skywalker is going to be like the terminology for like the new, like
Jedi.
the new force for justice in the world. Like,
Yeah, that's
and I kind of like that idea, and I think that kind of jives with this. Again, you kind of have to do the legwork, but I like the idea that she's the last Jedi, she's the only Skywalker,
Right.
but she's not, that she chose that for herself, and I feel like other people, it still has that Star Wars feeling of like, there's more stuff out here. This universe is not over, and it's fun to imagine a world where people are like, I want to be a good person. I want to be a Skywalker.
Right.
So,
On that note, I think we should wrap it up.
yeah.
So, hell yeah.
That's Star Wars.
That's Star
That's
Wars.
Star Wars,
through
the Skywalker series.
If you've never seen them, check them out.
Filled with spoilers on this episode if you've been listening to that. But if not, I mean, give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. If you disagree with us, we love
I'm
talking.
sure you do.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of thoughts, but I think we covered a lot of bases here.
If you
And,
disagree with me, I don't give a shit. I'm just kidding. All I want to do is talk about movies.
Yeah, so I mean, hit us up. We're on Letterboxd. Get on Letterboxd if you're not on it, and go see Star Wars. Let us know what you think. Like and subscribe. Have a great night.